All right, everybody. We're going to be talking briefly about the United States and a very quickly growing population that is going to shift dramatically through the century of the 1800s. But as you move out of the 1700s and you hit the turn of the 1800s with the new century, we were still very much largely a farming-based society. An agrarian economy would be the proper term. Just a couple statistics for you to take a look at the turn of the century. About 5.3 million people lived in the United States total. That's kind of a measly number compared to our 330 million or so plus that we have today. By 1800, there were 16 states that were in the United States at that point. 3 more than our original 13. The most recent additions were Kentucky, Tennessee, and Vermont. Make sure you remember that magic number of 16 states. I have a feeling you might see it again somewhere in the future. Out of the 16 states, the largest state was Virginia with 886,149 residents. Our home state of Pennsylvania came in a little bit of a distant second with 602,545 residents. To put that in perspective, the city of Philadelphia today has over 1.5 million people living in it alone. So you'd be looking at not quite, but nearly 3 times the size of Pennsylvania back then would fit into Philadelphia today. Only 6% of Americans lived in cities at the turn of the century in 1800. 94% of the people still lived in rural areas, farming-based communities, and most people's job was working as a farmer. The largest city in the United States was New York, which had hit the grand total of 60,514 residents or citizens at the turn of the century in 1800. Philadelphia was about 41,000, if I remember seeing that correctly. To put that in maybe modern context for you, the city of Lancaster in 2018, one of the most recent stats I could find, only had 59,420 residents. So our home city of Lancaster is pretty close in size to what New York, the largest city in the United States, would have been at the turn of the century in 1800, just to give you some perspective on the numbers there. Out of the United States, about 1 million people that lived in this nation were Africans living in America. They composed about 20% of the overall population at that point in history. And out of all the people who were of African American ancestry, about 75% or 3/4 were still enslaved, and about 1/4 of them were free. So that's a little bit of a snapshot of the population in the U.S. at the turn of the century as we start to hit a 100-year stretch where that number is going to just explode, and there's no looking back from that point forward to the modern era.